The ground shook beneath the feet of visitors when the first crack appeared in the heart of Yellowstone National Park. The sky, once a crystalline blue, darkened with an unnatural speed, as if a curtain of shadow had been drawn from the heights of the atmosphere. A golden, ethereal and spectral light began to emanate from the fractured ground, and for a few seconds, time seemed to hold its breath. Tourists dropped their phones, children fell silent, guides halted their explanations. Then came the sound, not an ordinary roar, but a subterranean lament, as if the earth itself were weeping, a muffled trumpet echoing from within the rock, a sound that shouldn't have been there, a sound that didn't belong to this world. Was this merely a quirk of nature or a direct sign from God? What occurred in the last few hours at Yellowstone is not just another geothermal phenomenon among the many recorded in scientific annals. It is not merely a warning from the famous supervolcano. For eyes that see beyond the surface, what opened there was a spiritual rift. Jesus, in Luke 21, warned us, "There will be great earthquakes, famines and pestilences in various places, terrifying events and great signs in the heavens." What we have just witnessed on American soil cannot be separated from these words. The earth groaned, the sky responded, and the heavens once again sounded the trumpet. Witnesses reported not only the physical tremor, but an inner unease, a fear that didn't come from what was seen, but from what was felt. "It was as if something was rising from the abyss," said a woman with a trembling voice. A creaking lingered in the air, even after the sounds had ceased. A small child looked at the sky and asked, "Mommy, is this when Jesus comes back?" And the silence that followed her question was more revealing than any answer. Creation seemed to be in conflict with itself, as if something had been torn between the visible and the invisible. Yellowstone, that ancestral lung of the earth, known for its beauty and its dormant fury, issued a call. Deep fissures appeared near the region of Old Faithful, the world's most famous geyser. But this time, it didn't erupt as expected. Instead, a column of dark, almost black vapor rose, carrying the smell of sulfur and a shape that many said resembled a horse in flames. This was not the invention of one or two. Dozens reported the same vision, as if their eyes were tuned to another reality. And then the question spread like wildfire. What is happening? The media tried to control the narrative. They called in geologists. They showed graphs. They said everything was within the normality of a volcanic park. But hearts were not convinced, because there was something different this time. The wind carried an urgency. The trees leaned in strange ways. The animals moved in the opposite direction of the tourists, as if they knew something deeper was approaching. Nature does not lie, and nature seemed to be saying, "Prepare yourselves." This event in Yellowstone is yet another piece in a prophetic mosaic that is taking shape with alarming speed. Just days ago, tremors were felt in places where they were not expected. Oklahoma, Missouri, even parts of Canada. Metallic sounds like deep bells or giant doors being opened were recorded in amateur videos. On certain nights, the clouds over the Rocky Mountains took on orange and purple hues, pulsing as if they were breathing. The ancients would call these omens. The attentive today call them signs. Romans 8 reminds us, the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. It groans and suffers as in the pains of childbirth. Yellowstone groaned, and it did not groan alone. The seas have raised their voice, the heavens have cried out with fire and ice, the forests burn out of season, stones fall from the skies, birds flee from the trees. What more will it take for humanity to awaken? There is no more time for cynical disbelief. There is no more room for the spiritual coldness that treats everything as coincidence or an isolated phenomenon. What happened in Yellowstone, and what is still happening, is a mirror of the prophetic warning that runs through Scripture like a river of fire. Isaiah 24 declares, "The earth staggers like a drunkard. its transgressions weigh upon it, and it falls, never to rise again. Every crack in the ground is a reflection of a crack in the collective soul of humanity. Every external tremor reveals an internal imbalance. Judgment does not begin with thunder, it begins with signs. Imagine for a moment that you were there, that you felt the ground shake, that you saw the black smoke rise, that you heard a trumpet where none should be. Would you recognize the warning? Would your heart fall to its knees before your knees touched the ground? Or would you think it's all just random? That is the question, hanging like a divine whisper over the skies of America at this moment. The trumpet is not just echoing among the pines, it is echoing in the consciousness of the sensitive. Joel 2 says, "Blow the trumpet in Zion, sound the alarm on my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming. It is near." The trumpet sounded in Yellowstone. And it was not an environmental alarm, it was a spiritual summons. The children of the kingdom felt it, the shepherds with open eyes perceived it, and those who walked with the Spirit did not sleep that night, because they knew something changed, something was activated. The prophetic clock moved forward another minute. And you, can you still hear the voice of God amidst the noise of the world? Or has your soul been numbed by scientific explanations that try to silence what is essentially spiritual? Are you spiritually awake? Or have you been lulled to sleep by the comfort of a faith without vigilance? What if this is the last warning before the final collapse? What if the abyss that opened in the ground is the same one that will open in the hearts of those who refuse to believe? Revelation 6 speaks of seals being opened, of riders being released, and many believe the first ones are already galloping across the earth. Wars, famines, epidemics, and now the earth itself cries out. When creation groans and the heavens respond, the spiritual cannot remain silent. They must rise, they must warn, they must weep between the porch and the altar. The sky has already spoken, the earth has already trembled, the trumpet has already sounded. And you? But there is something even more unsettling happening behind human eyes, something that cannot be captured by satellites or monitored by seismographs. What opened in Yellowstone was also a breach in the invisible world, as if a veil had been torn. Not the veil of the temple, but the veil between realms. A boundary broke, and what was once only sensed by a few is now beginning to be felt by many. People reported dreams that night. Dreams of fiery horses crossing the skies, of waters rising and swallowing cities, of angels sounding trumpets before a sea of fire. These were not ordinary nightmares. They were calls, summons in the form of images, visions deposited in souls. The ancient prophets would call this the spirit of revelation. And Joel, in his fiery prophecy, said that in the last days God would pour out his spirit on all flesh, and young men would see visions, old men would dream dreams, and servants and maidens would prophesy. We are seeing this now, not as a spectacle, but as a final act of mercy. God is speaking, God is showing, God is pouring out. But who has eyes to see? Who still hears? The networks filled with videos. Some showed the dark vapor. Others, audio captured with sensitive microphones revealing low, deep frequencies, as if a horn's sound echoed from the depths. Technicians tried to explain it with scientific terms, but something escaped their equations, something that cannot be measured with instruments, because there are moments when the spiritual overflows into the natural, and all the sciences of the world cannot contain the glory or the judgment of God. And while agencies debate probabilities, the heavens continue announcing certainties. Signs in the heavens, signs on the earth. Jesus said in Matthew 24, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken." In Yellowstone, we saw a prophetic miniature of that shaking, a small preview of what is to come, a shadow of the great day. an echo of eternity invading the present. Imagine the angels silent in that moment. Imagine the heavens watching, because when the supernatural touches the natural, there is no audience. There are witnesses, and what was witnessed there will not be forgotten anytime soon, because God marked the ground. God sealed that land with a sign, not of destruction yet, but of warning, a seal of mercy before the seal of judgment. And if you think this was an isolated event, observe what happened in the hours that followed in other parts of the world. In Iceland, a volcano dormant for decades released a column of fire unexpectedly. In Japan, fish began dying en masse off the coast of Iwaki. In France, continuous thunder echoed for nearly an hour over Marseille, with no visible lightning. And in Israel, at the Wailing Wall, a woman was recorded crying out loudly, "The time is up, he's coming!" And no one could take their eyes off her, because her voice seemed to come from another dimension. The signs are converging. The clocks are accelerating. God's hourglass is pouring its last grains. And yet, many continue as if nothing is happening. Asleep, distracted, absorbed, trapped in their own worlds, unable to perceive that the real world is collapsing around them. The door is still open, but for a short time. The Spirit is speaking, but few are listening. You, who hear these words now, must respond, not with curious comments, not with theories, but with bended knees, with a broken heart. Because if the ground of Yellowstone can open, who can guarantee that the ground of your own life is secure? What if that crack in American soil is also a crack in your soul? What if the call echoing from beneath the earth is the same call knocking at the door of your spirit? Zechariah 14 speaks of a day when the Mount of Olives will split in two, and a new geography will emerge before human eyes. What we today call impossible will, on that day, be undeniable. We are living the creaks before the rupture, the groans before the birth, the pains before the return. And every event like Yellowstone reminds us of this. Jesus is coming back, not in metaphors, not in symbols, in reality, in glory, in power. Therefore, it is time for repentance, time to watch, time to fast, time to listen. Because when the seals are fully opened, there will be no more time for preparation. The modern Noah is already preaching. The ark is already being closed. And the rains, though different, have already begun to fall. Awake, you who sleep, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Ephesians 5:14. This word is not just for the unbelievers. It is for the lukewarm. It is for the accustomed. It is for those who have lost their fear. God is no longer whispering, he is shouting. The trumpet is no longer on the horizon, it is in the air. In homes, in dreams, in the skies, in the volcanoes. Share this, not as news, but as prophecy. Write in the comments, "I am watching, be a watchman on the wall, a herald in the valley, an awakener of souls." There are lives depending on your voice. There are hearts that will only hear when you decide to speak. Be the trumpet that echoes after Yellowstone. Pray, cry out, turn back. Jesus is coming back.